In today's episode of Inbound Let Outbound, Anthony Kennaada, founder and CEO of Audience Plus and author of the book called Category Creation, shared with us why you shouldn't create a category if you're an early stage startup. And if you're wondering what you should do instead, stay tuned. The video tells you exactly what you should do. Let's get started. Welcome to the Inbound Let Outbound workshop. We should have week numbers. This is probably week number, I don't know, what have we been doing this for? 4 or 5 months? Yeah, maybe it's something that I said. Who knows? Maybe it's something I said. So our esteemed guest today, I'm very excited about this conversation. It's Anthony Kennaada. He's a former COO of Gainsight, or CMO, excuse me, former CMO of Hopin, currently founder CEO of Audience Plus. And I'm really interested to dive into it with Anthony because today we're going to discuss a book that he wrote called Category Creation. And I'm very curious about his thoughts on how early in a startup journey can do and should you start thinking about category creation, and then kind of like what it even means and what, whatever. And then we're going to shift to talk about what he believes is the future of marketing in this dream he is pursuing with Audience Plus. And then the question we asked Alina last week that I love so much is, what were you doing at these unicorns that if you had a 1 million ARR budget, you would still be doing to get customers? So that's roughly our show for today. Anthony, welcome. Did I nail the intro well enough?
I love it. Thank you, Adam.
Sweet.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, awesome. So, dude, let's just jump into it. What is category creation all about? And why did you write that book?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll say a couple things. One, world was a little different, I would say, back in 2019 when the book came out. And second thing I'd say is if I wrote a sequel or follow up to that book, it would be "Don't Create a Category." But I think we'll talk about this. I think back in the mid 2010s, like there was a lot, like creating a category became this like romanticized idea. There was a book that Play Bigger, I believe, wrote that kind of made its way through the boardrooms and through, the different kind of VC offices. And the core premise was there's a lot of market value that is effectively reserved for companies that are able to not disrupt an existing market, but rather create a market and go on and evangelize this whole new industry. And there's examples in the consumer context, like you think of like what Uber did for ride sharing or what Gatorade did for the sports drink industry. And on the B2B side, of course, you can think of what maybe HubSpot has done for the marketing automation space, or Salesforce or DocuSign. And all together, that is a true thing, right? There is a lot of the data shows a market cap kind of benefit to companies that are able to do that versus disrupting an existing market. The challenge with it, I think, is that it became romanticized. Like it became an initiative within the organization to say, we have to go and create a category. And I think that's flawed. Like, I think in general, companies that create a category or should create a category have no other option. There's no like incumbent competitor in their market that they're looking to steal market share from. People, when you describe the problem that they're trying to solve, have no idea like exactly what you're talking about. And you have to like evangelize the problem just as much as you're evangelizing the solution. And for those types of companies, like there's no real playbook for how to do that. And that's, to answer your question, why I wrote the book is at Gainsight. That's what we found ourselves in back in 2013 or so. There wasn't this company that was effectively selling to this customer success buyer, but there was this real pain that we observed that recurring revenue, the fundamental business model, had a challenge. You had to renew the customer. Of course, you know this very well. And no one was paying attention to the customer success professional who carried the bag from a retention, renewals, kind of upsell perspective. And so we, rather than trying to position the software as a disruption around like a customer support tool or something of the like, we found a way to champion this persona in the customer success organization champion their career, build resources, create the event, write the book, all these types of things that now, only looking backwards, we could say helped create the category for customer success. So that was a lot of talking, so I'll just stop
Yeah.
now. But I don't think
So
that it's a must kind of a thing.
so let's say hypothetically you were creating maybe like a person level website visitor identity tool or something like that.
Hypothetically.
And you watched a company that may or may not have been called Drift do that in like a very commoditized space, create this category called conversational marketing.
Yeah.
So this is kind of making me rethink what we're doing here. So why specifically are you like, don't do it? Like if you're me,
Yeah.
you're just not doing it, right? Or
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, I think don't do it because, for the most part, it's kind of a slog. Like it took
yeah,
Gainsight 5 years for the honestly the revenue momentum to catch up to like the buzz and the marketing momentum we were able to create. And thankfully, we survived long enough to be able to catch the wave that we were creating.
yeah,
Um, it oftentimes can be expensive. I think a lot has changed since 2019, but oftentimes, if you're hosting your own conference, you're putting a lot of budget on the line, hoping you can offset that with sponsors or ticket sales or everything else. If you're writing a book, that could be a distraction for a small team from like hitting the short-term goals that we have to hit, right? So it's takes a long time. It's expensive in the broadest sense. And I think it's sort of taking the harder road of marketing where you could do things a lot easier. So I don't know. So I think like for Come to Audience Plus, and keep talking about like my back's against the wall. Like I have to create a category because
yeah,
there's no other way forward. There's no way for me to teach the world that building an audience matters and how that sort of, the first party data is an important component to that and how we use that data to drive, downstream revenue decisions. We have to talk about the problem a lot. So that's my take on why we shouldn't do it, because if you don't have to, there's an easier path to success.
it's very interesting. You read that Play Bigger book, and it's just like it just sings to you.
It's
It almost
beautiful. Yeah.
it almost like makes me feel like if I don't try to create a category, I'm not trying hard enough. Like that's like the message that I get from that
You're
book.
you're playing smaller, right? If you're
Right.
not.
Exactly. Well, that's the implication.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
totally.
Well, that's why we
I
wrote the
was,
book, right? Was like the book was great in theory, but there was no like operator's guide to how to do this.
yeah,
It was all just like theory, and it's sung to the CEO and to the board. But we didn't seek to create a category. We're just like, we got to like hit the pipeline target, and there's no keywords I can bid on to like take
yeah,
like a paid shortcut here. All we can do is create a lot of content to educate the market, create community programs to bring these early adopters together, the first followers, to start kind of creating some social proof and consensus, somehow convince those people to buy our product, and then basically lather, rinse, and repeat. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of why, at least that's why I ended up writing the book, was kind of chronicling that, how we did that.
yeah. And what you just described is kind of marketing, whether you create a category or not, right? Like in
Yeah.
my opinion, like for an early
Yeah,
stage startup, like that's what I've always tried to do. Like
totally.
I mean, um,
The work you're
it-
doing is very much like, I would argue, maybe in 2019, what we would have called category creation, in the sense that like you're building, if I may, an amazing founder brand. You're building followership behind this overall problem set. You're building in public. You're sharing your journey, and you can reach a whole lot more people on LinkedIn doing this than getting 50 people together in a conference room or whatever. So that's why I'm like, I don't think category creation has to be the thing anymore. I think another way to say it is we have to be audience first. We have to lead with thought leadership. We have to, create content and put content at the forefront of how we go to market. And in 2024, that's marketing. I think it's
right,
it's the only way forward in our practice now, holistically.
right. Santosh.
So can I, yeah, back in Gainsight, I'm wondering at what point did you think you had to undergo this category creation initiative, and how did you convince your investors and stakeholders? How was it obvious that this was the right strategy?
Yeah, and admittedly, we didn't think it was category creation at the time. I had
Right.
just started at the company. Nick, who was the CEO, came in about 3 months prior. It was right before the Series A, and Nick was doing his sort of like getting up to speed on the product, the customers, and all that. And we had both recently been at Symantec just before this, and so we had a little bit of like big company bias, which was kind of weird because one of the first things we did was reach out to like Forrester and Gartner and some of these industry analysts, and we did what was called like a briefing, which was free. And so we kind of shared with them like a demo, kind of our pitch, kind of how our early customers were using us. And there was all of their recommendations for what category they'd put us in aligned, of course, to a specific research area that they were trying to sell us services for, ironically. But none of it felt authentic, right? Like now we know this is like a retention, renewals, upsell kind of value proposition, but they put us in the customer support bucket. And we're like, oh gosh, like we don't really
Right.
compete with Zendesk or any of these other tools. Like, or you're the next generation of CRM. And we're like, God, like there's no way we're trying to pick a fight with Salesforce or with any of these other tools. None of these felt authentic or felt right for our customers and the vision that the founders had. So the light bulb went off. There was this group on LinkedIn called the Customer Success Management Professionals or whatever. There might have been only 100 or so CSMs in the whole world at that time. Half of them probably worked at Salesforce. And they would meet in person at these monthly meetups, basically in little like offices around the Bay Area. And so we went to one right as this whole Gartner Forrester thing was happening. And it was like not a fancy event. It was like a conference room, pizza, beer, or whatever. But there was this like feeling when you walked into the room, like, oh my gosh, I'm finally around other people who are going through what I'm going through. And this like cathartic kind of sense of like relationship being formed. And that was when the light bulb went off. And we said, hey, what if we did an event just like they did, but maybe, put on a little bit of production or whatever, called in some favors with Nick's network, some of our early investors, and made it all about customer success, not about our crappy product that at the time was very like early. The 3 to 5 customers we had, it wasn't about us at all. It was all about them. Like, would people come? And it ended up being, I think, about 300 people in our first year, like that same sense of energy and excitement. And so the counterintuitive thing we did was host a conference basically to validate that this strategy would work. But again, as a Series A company, you can't just go host a conference every quarter. So we're like, how do we scale this? And that's when it turned into content and then virtual events and then all of these other things that were meant to basically scale that in-person connection we tried to create around the problem of customer success and wrapping community around it, not necessarily talking about our product, at least in the initial years.
I've actually got a question from Angela that I thought was pretty good. Sorry, Santosh, you want to ask another one?
Yeah, go ahead.
So Angela asks, this is kind of like, this is the way I interpret it. Even if you don't create a category, can it help you influence your messaging from being something that's incremental to being like a new vehicle? I think I'm interpreting that question correctly. Angela, is that the right way? Basically, she's like, if I feed a category creation into AI, it writes way better, way better and more inspiring copy for me.
Sure. I think I understand the question, but basically, yeah, like I would think of it less of like said another way, how much time are we spending talking about the problem versus talking about our product? And ChatGPT could probably spin up a whole lot of content and compelling points of view on the problem. And our job could be to like build like a LinkedIn program around that, a content franchise around that, host an event about that problem. And 5 years ago, I would have said you're creating a category around that problem. At least if there aren't obvious competitors that are in that space saying the same thing you are at the end of the day. That's when category creation is when you look around the room and you realize you're the only one there, at least in the early days. And then it becomes a real category when over time more people start coming into the room. But yeah, I mean, I think if you're disrupting an existing incumbent and you are talking still about the problem in a way, it's disruption at its core, but you're still going to market in a very modern audience first way. I think that's probably the better approach. If you can, at least if you can get away with it.
So let me follow up on something you said, right? And then there's a question related to this as well. Let me see if I can articulate this right. So category creation, you said, is where you find yourself as the only person in the room. That's the destination, right? The origin is you may be in a crowded room, right? And you want to you may be operating in a crowded space. So that journey that you take requires a lot of conviction, where not just you, but the team, the management team, the investors, and other stakeholders need to be willing to invest to buy into your dream, right? There's a lot of benefit, but how did you go about, or how do you think companies need to, or founders need to think through this?
Yeah, I'll answer the question. There's one. I almost want to challenge the premise too, though, and this is where I don't know. Like, I think I'm learning a lot. Would love your guys' feedback on this, but like, I don't think you should like have a strategy around creating a category. I feel like, meaning in an effort to like pivot away from a crowded space, because the risk to that is this is just marketing for the sake of marketing kind of a thing versus something that's a bit more authentic. Gainsight, Audience Plus, for better or for worse, by the way, I wish it wasn't this. We had our back against the wall. Like, there's no audience marketing platform out there that it's a cognitive reference in people's minds where they're like, I'll rip out my audience marketing platform and use this new one. People are like, what is an audience marketing platform? What are you talking about? Who are you? And that's where we have to invest in this stuff. So that's my maybe controversial point of view is I don't think people should aspire to create a category. You either are or you're not. Now, how we convince your board and stuff, like what you're asking is super important, right? Like, they ultimately have to be bought in. There has to be an appreciation for the long game too, because a lot of this stuff bears fruit over time versus, immediately. Right. There's also not a lot of like great comp metrics around, conversion rate and these other kind of things for category creation because no one's done it before for that specific problem that you're kind of out there doing. So I think there's this, you have to have buy-in. If you're a CEO and founder listening to this, you have to have buy-in from, I would say, your board, if you have one, your investors, if you've taken outside capital, or you have to find ways, from a bootstrap perspective to like keep the conviction yourself and find cheap to free ways to build an audience. And I think, a lot has changed in the last 5 years to help do that. But if you're taking capital and if you're working with folks, they have to believe, or the risk is you're introducing friction, or friction will be introduced when things take longer than usual to develop.
Great. So
do you guys agree with that? I'm curious, by the way. Like, I don't want to,
well, look, let's do a, let's ask the audience. Audience, can you give us a yes if you agree with Anthony's assertion that you should only try to create a category when you have to, and a no if you do not? And like, I'm sitting here trying to do it, and like the pushback, trying to do it. I don't know whether I'm trying to do it or not. I think that I'm calling this thing the inbound outbound live, but it's not. Yeah. It's not like, it's different than what you're describing.
I think it is. I think it is.
It's like, yeah. But this is incredible food for thought. John, can we run that poll? I just want to find out from the audience who's new and who is returning here, just so we got a sense. We'll let that go for another minute. And then Santosh is going to moderate section 2, where we dig into exactly what audience marketing is and why you believe it's the future and what led to that. So
while we are waiting for the results, Anthony, every company aspires to be different, right? Or to look different.
Yeah.
At what point looking different turns into, say, creating a category? And do you think a lot of companies intentionally do this, or they accidentally end up there?
Yeah, good question. I think that I definitely think, the marketplace is crowded and it's noisy, and your ability as a brand to stand out is existential to marketing, right? You have to find ways to break through the noise and ultimately get access to that audience. Now, I think I think maybe going back to that last kind of question, I think intentionally trying to manufacture a narrative that is a blue ocean narrative, if your product is not a blue ocean product, is probably not a great outcome or a great way to go. I think most folks at the foundational stage of the business are like, how do we grow this thing? Like, what are we going to do? Like, to actually transfer sort of the empathy from our early customers, or maybe some of these initial kind of use cases, into something that's repeatable, so we can generate pipeline ultimately for our products. And I think, at least in the folks that I've talked to, Gong being one of them, maybe a great example of this as well, they sort of stumbled into this strategy. Like,
Mhm.
this wasn't a board meeting around to play bigger kind of presentation that started a category creation effort. So I think the two things are different. I think this next section we'll talk about, because
Sure.
in 2025, I think it's just a little bit different now from the channels that are available and just the understanding of kind of the traditional marketing funnel that has really, I think, evolved quite a bit.
Yeah.
But I think absolutely you need to stand out as a brand, no question about it.
Totally. All right, let's dive into the next section. Adam, is there anything around survey results that
No, that
you want?
that is very interesting and surprising, close to the category creation thing, and definitely going to give me some food for thought. I'm going to be meditating on this. I'm about to take 3 weeks off. I have a kid coming on Monday.
Oh, nice.
I'm just be
Congratulations.
sitting there thinking about you know, Anthony's words and how I
Oh my gosh.
shouldn't be
I'm sorry.
creating a
I apologize.
category. So yeah, Santosh, kick us
So,
off with section
Anthony,
2.
so tell us what you're doing with Audience Plus.
Yeah. It's a nice bridge, right? Because I think I'm sort of hinting towards this, but I think the core premise in general that we've been wrestling with, or something that I've thought has been kind of a core part of what made Gainsight different, something we started
Mhm.
doing at Front and Hopin, was to build thought leadership in the market, and then use thought leadership as a function to monetize that into revenue. And so to me, that felt, again, very different. And a core principle of category creation was like building relationship around the problem, building ideas around the problem, evangelizing that out, cultivating a group of people who are the first followers and believers into this. And sort of as I was sort of studying the space more, what I
Mhm.
started really getting excited about, or just feeling like really convicted behind, is this idea of like the 95-5 rule, which I think folks have all heard about this. There's some research out of Australia, that only 5% of our audience at any given time is in market for our products or services.
Right.
And so we have 95% of our audience that's within our ICP, paying active attention. They're going to our website, but they're not there to buy. They're there to
Right.
learn. They're there to connect. They're there to belong, to sort of like self-actualize in their career. And a lot of what we get to do on the marketing side is to help them kind of on that journey. And what sort of, as I started thinking about the pain here, I was reflecting on the fact that the inbound marketing playbook that we've been executing now is almost 20 years old. Marketing automation, the Serious Decisions waterfall, name your kind of framework. And all of us have been doing it, and yet so much has changed. Those frameworks themselves, those funnels, are built around helping us convert our entire audience into
Right.
demos or into some type of downstream commercial opportunity. And the risk is, it works great for the 5%. It works great for the people that are in market, but it creates a really fractured experience for folks that are not
For
in
the
market.
rest. Yeah.
And so I think that what has to happen for this next generation of marketing, for us to be impactful, there has to be something that comes before the 5% funnel. And we're calling it audience marketing. And the idea is, how can we as marketers build relationship with the broader, the much, much bigger kind of cohort of our audience through our content, through our social following, through all of these different things in order to effectively get to a place where when they are ready to buy, they're going to think of us first. And we're going to be the top of mind. And, they're going to think of buying our product versus the competitors because there's been this kind of relationship that's been developed. And so big kind of believer that audience marketing is going to, especially given the volume, of course, of accounts that are kind of held within that cohort, help feed your 5%. Like you'll do a better job converting, hitting your pipeline targets next quarter if you've built relationship with the market this quarter. And so we're effectively building an operating system for that, to help companies kind of operationalize that entire process. But at the heart of it is this idea of how can we almost go back to like first principles from a marketing perspective and establish and scale our ability to build relationships between our brand and the audiences that we serve.
Amazing. I'm sold. What stage companies do you work with?
Oh man. Right now we're a little all over the place, but I think more likely we'll land as sort of a mid-market type company. We're still figuring it out, if I'm being honest. Like we're still kind of a seed stage business ourselves. But I think there's several kind of components to it. You need, folks that believe in leading with, video content, live streaming, podcasts, like these types of more emerging formats versus just kind of performance marketing, performance content from an SEO perspective. And, some of the things that I think help us get conviction for mid-market is, is there a content team in place that can produce the content to get enough of the right cadence to develop the relationships? So right now that's sort of my thesis at least, but we've got customers that are early foundational stage businesses that don't want to build on a blog and kind of have like yesterday's playbook and instead want to be leaning into audience marketing from the inception stage. And we have a Fortune 100 company as well that's, effectively taking their entire event strategy and turning it into a 365-day kind of media brand for their audience. So,
Right.
it may not be the greatest best practice, but right now we're casting kind of a wide net and we're looking for that focus, which I think is leading us to mid-market.
And what are the key components of this platform? Sorry to cut you off, Santosh.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I'm pretending that I know nothing about it. We're a customer, by the way. But like,
thank you.
What like when you think about this new way and then future of marketing, like
yeah.
What is the blog reimagined, or like what makes it different than like, this old inbound playbook that we were from a tactical standpoint, right?
So 3 elements to it as we're now trying to tell the story better: engage, understand, and act. On the engage side, we've built a surface on your website that can either replace your existing resource center or even your blog potentially, that kind of builds almost like a community-led kind of Netflix-like experience for your content. And it's multimodal. It's designed for video, it's designed for audio podcasts, written word, PDF. All of this content can be publicly accessible like it would be on a blog or anywhere else, or the content could be set as exclusive just for your subscribers. So we're bringing a little bit of that Substack, Patreon kind of concept and saying to the enterprise or to the business kind of community, and saying, how can we build subscribers owned kind of first party relationships with our audience through our website? And the jump that we see is quite higher conversion rates for people who aren't just, optimizing or aren't just here to like talk to sales or start using the product, but they want to follow, they want to learn, they want to, get more educated around this thing that you're talking about. So that's the engage kind of product. Understand is what we're working on now, but effectively as folks are subscribing and building that first party relationship, we're using the first party data that they're creating as they're interacting with all of your content, as well as using some augmentation with AI services effectively to help you deeply understand your audience. Where are they in their buyer journey? Are they just a fan? And if they're a fan, how can we do things to kind of help drive more engagement or drive referrals or whatever? Or are they showing signal of being in market and ready to kind of have a conversation? And some of that too is drawn inspiration from like, what's all the data that YouTube has on us or TikTok has on us or LinkedIn has on us that we don't have access to today? And how can we give brands that ability to understand their audience to that level of granularity. And then act is effectively the ability to act on those signals. And that's coming kind of down our roadmap, but thinking about how we can sort of execute campaigns or help kind of do human assist type campaigns, a type of intent signals for the team to take action on the data to help drive outcomes. So that's kind of the current kind of architecture that we're leading with. And this idea of driving engagement is where we started today.
So are you guys also building any, or if you think about the future, do you see the tool stack kind of evolve or change around thought leadership or around this audience marketing? I don't know if
Yeah,
you guys are building some of those tool stacks as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think our platform, I think our ambition over the medium to long term is this becomes effectively the system of record for your audience, and an
Nice.
understanding of the 95, which today again is living somewhere on LinkedIn, somewhere on, anonymous, things that there's some great technology out there to help make a little less anonymous, and other things to help you like understand them. We try to pull all of that into a single view of your audience, and then be able to drive deeper engagement with them through your content marketing and events. So yeah, I think the whole stack's changing. I think AI is extremely disruptive to MarTech, and I think we're all kind of looking for that next playbook, and then the underlying tools that are going to help power the new playbook.
And what role do you think the influencers play in the B2B in this whole audience marketing framework?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, I think even if you go back to like the blogging kind of 1.0, version of all of this, there's merit to having other voices kind of contribute their point of view onto your platform. So we've done like guest contributors to our blog in the past, right? Things of that nature. And the benefit is some of these folks are influential to your specific audience. And so doing a partnership deal with them to create content on your property, on your network, has a lot of benefits to kind of the overall kind of brand equity of your content program. It's not just us telling you how to do something. This is sort of for the community, by the community. We're curating the best voices around this problem that we're trying to drive awareness towards or around. They have, in many cases, built-in distribution as well. They might have a followership. And so as they distribute the content, let's say on LinkedIn, to their audiences, perhaps linking back to the full episode or whatever on your property, you're sort of playing a little bit of arbitrage on audience borrowing there as well. And you're showing that there's an ecosystem kind of wrapped around your this idea, or just the thought leadership that you're trying to create. So I think the power of using creators and influencers and others to help validate your claim in your market, get some production support too, by the way. Creating content takes a lot of work. So getting others to create it either with you or for you is helpful, but then also getting access to their audience is a key element of this new world, this new playbook.
And do you
Makes sense.
my opinion on all this and why I started doing it was like, I mean, I was sharing an office with the guys who started Jasper 2 years before they started Jasper AI. And like, just seeing what this app could do, it was like, okay, the amount of just grade B sludge that's going to get created for SEO is going to go up by 1,000x. Everybody's going to be trying to use this to like create founder brand content. Like, what is the maximum possible authentic? How do you amplify authenticity the most?
Yeah.
And for me, it was just like, be hyper transparent about my journey and do it with my face.
Yeah, totally.
In like that, it seems like if okay, AI is going to be super disruptive. It keeps getting better. I've even noticed recently, like it really used to piss me off when I try to answer every one of my comments.
Yeah.
And like, I could just tell when people were answering with an AI tool, because it'd be like short summary and then ask me a question. I'm like, fuck off, man. I'm like going through here and like, like actually taking the time to answer. But like now I don't really notice it anymore, so
better.
It's like I don't even know what I'm trying to ask here, but like it seems like the platform that you're describing is like amplifying the humanity in the content that is created
That's right.
relative to like what used to be an SEO blog post, right? It's
Absolutely.
like a richness of media that like really, if used correctly, it should do what I'm describing. And then that, of course, who makes that kind of shit? It's the creators and influencers,
Yeah,
right? Like
totally.
it's that's who does that, right? Because
Yeah.
that's who people will watch or
Yeah.
whatever. Um, yeah,
We
that
have,
was just a reflection. It's like as AI continues to be ever more disruptive, it's like, what are you going to do?
yeah, for sure.
Whether you do it on your platform or not, in my opinion, and the reason we're spending so much time on it is that
Yeah.
you to stand out, you have to do stuff like this, you know.
Right.
Um,
And there's the idea
yeah,
that people buy from people, right? They want to
yeah,
know who Adam is, like, what's his point of view on the market. And, folks are buying into our B2B and retention because of you. And I think that's coming out of the creator context. That's coming out of a lot of what we've seen in the consumer world, at least from like a medium perspective, right? We're creating short form content and these types of things. But it's sort of at the root of like the humanity of business, since the beginning of time. So I think it's almost like weird. This is so disruptive. It's like this should be the way every company is building relationships ultimately.
and I think more and more it will be. You
Yeah.
made me think about something, and I want to just go completely off topic for a second. What do you think about the new LinkedIn video feed?
I mean, I don't know. I never use it, to be honest. Like
Yeah,
when it came out in beta, I was like, oh, here it comes. Like
yeah.
this is it. Um, I don't know. I mean, I feel like LinkedIn's I won't get too crazy here, but it feels pretty noisy, I would say, and I'd say that the videos that are being curated aren't necessarily from the people who I want to see content from. So I think there's some algorithmic kind of nuance. I think part of the challenge is LinkedIn's built on a people graph ultimately, right, based on our connections that we have. Whereas you look at like a TikTok or something, it's built on an interest graph. So there's
Yep.
something so addictive about TikTok, but a better way of saying it is like value added, I guess, if your algorithm is tuned the right way. And the LinkedIn video has not, in my mind, captured my interests well,
Yeah.
to keep me coming back to it.
Well, look, as a creator, and I know there's some creators here. I got my first video. I don't know if you can even see this picked up um,
Oh,
last
nice.
week. It has 2,900,000 impressions.
Whoa.
So
Nice.
interestingly, it got picked up. So I have Alec as my consultant, and he's like a LinkedIn scientist. So it's got 119 comments. 90 of them were before it got picked up.
Whoa.
And then the followers that I got since then were a type of highly untargeted,
Hmm.
if you look at the titles and there's people missing headshots and like, you know what I mean? So it is not, it's kind of like, I think the type of follower that you would get from like joining a big engagement,
Hmm.
WhatsApp circle or
Oh gosh.
whatever, a bunch of big creatives who are all creators who are all like, boosting each other's posts. Whereas in Alex's view, and I've been sold on this, uh, the power of LinkedIn is actually being able to go viral within a very tight ICP
Right.
and get those followers. And uh, it's just very clear that the people who watch talking heads that we make that don't get picked up and the followers and engagement that come from it are, we would define them as much higher quality
Sure.
than something that does get picked up. Now, the question is uh, whether they fix that or not,
Sure.
you
Yeah.
know? Um, so, but like the inclination after this, and I may take a hard stand after my paternity leave being like, I'm not making short form video, but like, it's not doing the
Yeah.
thing that I'm looking for when I spend so much time on this.
Yeah.
As
Interesting.
of whatever the date is today, September 17th, 2024 at 2:40 p.m.
Right.
Um, can you have the link to the viral video? Yeah, I'll put it in there. I'll figure out a way to get it in the chat. Okay,
So
Santosh, back to
the,
you.
There's a question here, if I can bring up.
Yeah.
The question is, how does Audience Plus leverage audience data from third-party data providers for content personalization?
Yeah, I mean, some of this is our getting into roadmap a little bit for us right now. You know, at our where we are right now is we're helping you collect that first party subscription, and then we're annealing all of the audience engagement to that profile of the individual subscriber and giving you views on like the account level and those types of things. What we're really interested in, I think, is how um, some of these generative AI kind of capabilities would let us take, let's say, someone's email address and do a search for publicly available data, their LinkedIn profile, let's say, or something of the like, and then pull that context into like a contact record in Audience Plus. And so some of that is like some of the enrichment kind of use cases, right? Like you get an email address, and on the other side, you get first name, last name, company, title, those types of things. But what I think is more interesting is, okay, based on nothing more than that firmographic context or whatever you want to call that, can we infer or use the reasoning capabilities of these models to figure out what might they be interested in? And
Mhm.
from a topical perspective, maybe a format perspective, certain creators that they might want to follow. And all that could happen now with just somebody filling out a form with a single field with just their email address. And what makes our platform, I think, more interesting over time is our coloring and understanding of who this person is, not just by that inference, but by the first party data they're actually generating as they're interacting with various, content assets across your network. So we're going from a world of inference to more deeply knowing who they are and what they're interested in as they're engaging more and more. And again, this is TikTok, this is Netflix, YouTube, all of these sort of For You page type concepts, but we're kind of architecting that into the back end. So not again, that's something over the next 3 to 6 months we're going to be launching to customers, not something that's live today. But the idea is with that intention and
Right.
our then ability to generate metadata for all of your content as well. You know,
Yep.
if you have any call recording software at the end of a call, it's like these are the 5 things that were discussed on that call. It's pretty good today,
Totally.
actually. Like, it could be maybe better, but it's pretty close. And so we'll let you effectively like ingest like the transcripts of your video files that you upload, your audio podcasts, and we'll actually like do all the meta tagging for you, give you the ability to overwrite. And then as those things come together, sort of an audience graph and a content graph, we can start to say, well, these are the specific topics or these specific assets, or these are the creators in your network that you should partner with to help drive, for this specific person in your audience to help drive some deeper engagement with them. So that's kind of the
Got it. Yeah.
long-winded way of answering that.
So for a small company, maybe seed stage, maybe 1 million to 3 million in revenue, what would you suggest they do to kind of start to get a better handle on their audience?
I th-
If
yeah.
they're not working with you, just using off-the-shelf tools or
Yeah.
whatever else they're doing.
I'd say it's probably like 3 things. One, develop your point of view. What is your narrative ultimately that you're wanting to put out into the world? Maybe going back from what our
Mhm.
existing or our initial conversation was, is it a brand new problem that you want to drive attention and awareness around? Or is it a disruption around something that exists today that is just fundamentally broken and not working well? And so defining that narrative, I think, would be the first thing. It's free, cheap to free, if you want to, start writing in a Google Doc somewhere. Second, I would honestly take a page out of Adam's book. I would create a lot of content on LinkedIn, and I would start testing the
Mhm.
messaging. I would start finding ways to get distribution where your audience already exists today. And this is competing on the battlefield for attention and starting to drive engagement through that network, followership, validating your ideas and so on. We did that for a year before we told the world what Audience Plus did from a product perspective. We spent a year talking about the benefit of owning your own audience and all these types of things. And the third thing I would say maybe, and I don't know if this is like a 2A kind of a thing or 2B situation, but maybe start a show, like do one podcast or one, video series, one recurring event like this one. And what you'll notice is you start, like if I look back to like the first one I ever did, I'm not saying I'm like great today or anything, but you get better at it. You get more comfortable being on camera. If that's something that doesn't come naturally to you, it certainly didn't for me. And you start getting into a rhythm of like how to produce like more editorial, like authentic content. And I'd say putting in reps is kind of the best way to just get better at that. So all of that I think is free.
I was really bad when I started getting in front of the camera.
Are you? Do you have the first video somewhere or the first?
I dug up a couple from 2017. It was really bad. It was really bad.
Like me too.
Me too. But it gets better, and it gets and then it gets a lot better. And then at some point people are like, wow, like you're so natural on camera. Like I'd never be that way. I'm like, dude, like you should have seen what I was putting on Facebook in 2017, trying to grow my 3 million ARR startup that had not grown in 3 years. Like it was, you would have looked at it and said, I'm actually in a way better situation than that guy.
That's awesome.
Adam, do you have that video handy? There's some request.
So
I've seen it. It's so interesting.
Yeah,
it's funny.
I sent it to Christy the other day. She's gonna put it in some $1 billion challenge episode. Like here's what I mean. I put this on Facebook. Shopify.
The audio's coming through.
Shopify store owners, I have one question. Do you send out abandoned cart emails? Guess what? If you do, I can send out 4 times. Shopify store owners, I have one question. Do you send out abandoned cart emails? Because if you do, I can send out 4 times as many. That's right. 4 times as many abandoned cart emails with the lead.com plugin that I just built. Click through and sign up for the waitlist to learn more. I put that on, like I ran ad spend behind that. Like the idea that, you know what I mean? Like and nothing that I did around that time was any better than that. It was all just like nails on the chalkboard. I would get comments that were just like, cringe, like like you know, and then you know, like here's what I did. I actually I was down in Argentina at the time, and I hired this guy named Dustin Luke, who was trying to be a YouTuber in Argentina. He graduated college and he just wanted to be a YouTuber, and he like had this viral video that everyone's seen, and he like dated this girl that I knew. So I hired him for like 5 hours on some like very basic camera stuff, and then kind of like lost interest in video for a while. And then when we launched Get Emails, I did videos for 6 months, 1 minute per week. It was like a quick script with my wife. They were funny. They were like amusing. We used props and everything. And by the end of that, I was like, very good. He was horrible for the first 2 months. Like, I was like, Helen, like, go stand in front of a mirror and watch yourself, like read the script, you know. And then the next video she recorded, her face was frozen. She was like, I know. But it's like, you know, the point is like you fight your way to this like spot where it just feels supernatural.
Totally.
Okay. Time has flown by. The one thing that I wanted to ask you, which we meant to ask 10 minutes ago, was, you know, what were you doing at Gainsight and Hopin that, you know, if you had a 1 million ARR budget, you do today to get customers and drive pipeline specifically?
Yeah. Hopin's a weird one to try to answer that question with. I don't know if folks know that the Hopin story. You know,
can you give a 1 minute version of the Hopin story before we dive into this question?
Yeah.
Or like a 2 minute.
Sure. A virtual events platform came up kind of as the largest events in the world were shutting down. Built a really great product, capitalized, but really benefited from the pandemic, you know, for better, for worse, in the sense that it created a software platform that let folks connect virtually and build, you know, have these events and community meetings and gatherings happen, you know, from home. And, you know, I think the company raised a lot of money. So it's probably the least bootstrapped company of all time. Just thinking about the audience here, I think I forget the total raised, but it might be approaching the letter B. and grew from 0 to 60 million in 1 year of ARR. And then I think it went from like 60 to like 100 something, and then kind of hit a wall as the pandemic was slowing down, the world was opening up again, and so on. So I was there for, a quick journey up. Things were going really great. And then, as sort of things were changing, was sort of towards the tail end of my tenure there. But yeah, they raised a lot of money. And so, I mean, the capital deployment to think about it at 1 million of ARR is a little bit differently. It's a little like, it's an intellectual exercise. But what I will say, maybe I think the answer would be the same, whether it was Gainsight or Hopin. And I think I would start with the three things we said earlier of like, what's our compelling like brand strategy or narrative? Like, how do we, can come up with a story that's convicting and emotionally stirring, not just like feature function. And that doesn't cost a lot of money. You could spend a lot of money on a brand strategy project with an agency, or you can sort of just do this in-house. I would come up with a way to develop content. So what you're seeing here is about 15K of equipment that we have in a conference room that includes like the lighting, includes the fake plant right there, wherever that is. There we go. But on the other side here, some lighting, like a teleprompter, a couple cameras and all that. 15K, I can produce an unlimited amount of content now, right? I don't have to bring in like a production team to produce content. And so I would probably do something along those lines. And then I would focus on building an audience and finding ways to like effectively create a community around my product or this mission that we're trying to undertake. So I think all that's like cheap to free, and probably an important starting point. And then over time, you just start layering in the capital for around distribution, or, maybe like a show that you want to beef up some production for, and you work with a third party on some underlying technology. But I think all of that starts from the nucleus of the right story, the right sort of content to amplify that story, and the right distribution. And if you're selling to B2B, LinkedIn's probably a good place to start.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question, by the way. I get asked this all the time. It's like, what if I'm not selling to B2B? Like, or not even that. What if I'm not selling like MarTech, sales tech, whatever? Should I?
Yeah.
What should be my commitment to LinkedIn?
Good question. I mean, if your audience isn't on
what
LinkedIn,
is my Luke Pearson? What if my ICP is not on LinkedIn?
Yeah, their commitment to LinkedIn is definitely zero at that point, I imagine. But where are they? Are they on Reddit? Are they part of an association that barely has a digital presence, but that they're, having like a membership-based organization that does a conference every quarter or whatever? Or are they on YouTube? I don't know, but I would be where they are for sure. I would find ways to break through the noise, which is it's a challenge, right? There's an algorithmic kind of headwind that we have to navigate that's different for each of these places. Or if it's an association, it's like a partnership that likely you'd have to form or sponsor or attend or whatever. But I think the reason we're really passionate about this kind of audience marketing vision is what we want to do ultimately is wherever they are, we want to drive them to where we are, and build sort of that direct first party relationship with them. And so those are all sort of channels by which we need to be constantly there and posting and creating regular engagement, but we can't rely on YouTube. We can't rely on all these networks. And I think that's sort of the end game from a marketing perspective.
Rock on. Got any other questions, Santosh?
Let me look at the.
I think I talked too much. I'm sorry.
No.
There has been some questions around how did you come up with your own category, like audience marketing? And another related question.
So actually, specifically,
isn't this content marketing?
Yeah, specifically that question was like, how did you come up with the name audience marketing?
Yeah. So,
and like, how is it different than just content marketing? That was I think a combination of a few different questions.
Content is sort of like the arrow in the quiver, so to speak. Events are another arrow. Ultimately, what the category is trying to establish is this idea of we need to build relationships, first party relationships, ultimately with the broad set of our audience who may or may not even be in market for our products today. And that's always been true in the sense that that's kind of the nature of thought leadership in general, is we want to get people to subscribe to our newsletter or whatever the case is, come to our events, join webinars and events like this one. So the idea of like building a list, if we want to really, dehumanize it to some extent, but building a list around people who care about our broader market is kind of the core premise. Now, to answer the question, we didn't start with audience marketing. We started with owned media. And what we found about 2 years in is that was wrong. Owned media overly indexed around the media and the content themselves, leading to that same conclusion. Wait, isn't this just like content marketing, but maybe done a little bit differently? And so we recently did a repositioning exercise, and we said, what matters at the end of the day isn't just the content, it's a means to an end. The end is the relationship with the audience and how we kind of cultivate that, how we understand them better, and ultimately act on that understanding to drive revenue. So that's kind of how we landed on that. And again, I'm not like, we're all human, we're all marketers, we're all trying to figure it out. Like that's our best kind of articulation of this, and we're gonna test it. We're gonna spend a lot of time working on it, and we think this is the the next evolution of inbound marketing. But we're also going to learn and adapt and kind of go from there. I don't think anyone can get behind a mic and tell you like, this is exactly like 100%, like we have all the confidence in the world. But we think this is a much better articulation than where we started from with owned media.
Boom.
Nice.
Dude, thank you. This was great.
Thank you.
I'm very surprised you said don't create a category having written the book. I thought you were going to be the champion of it. Honestly, I was like, what?
Yeah. Well, I again, like if you got to do it, you got to do it, and that's the book
yeah,
to read to do it. But don't do it if you don't have to. Is I think the net takeaway.
Yeah. Where can people learn about you? Learn about Audience Plus? Yeah.
LinkedIn, obviously. Now that we've covered that one, or check us out on audienceplus.com, and we've got a shiny new explore content button on our homepage, and we produce a lot of great content there and do a lot of distribution on LinkedIn. So yeah, check us out.
Dope. Awesome. Well, thank you. Next week I'm out, but Santosh has Amit from Clearbit, the founder of Clearbit. They're going to talk about, Amit has some very progressive views about startups and the VC ecosystem and what the future is going to look like.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
I wouldn't want to miss this one because this guy he's got a very different view than most people. So cool. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Santosh.
And
Thanks
I will see you all in 3 weeks, and Santosh will see you all sooner.
Sure.
Oh yeah, I'll drop Anthony's book in the thing again if y'all want to check it out. Awesome. Cool. Take care, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.
All right.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.